Welcome to Fridays with Friends, the Friday edition of the UnPerfect Podcast, where I get to chat with some new and old friends of the podcast and pick their brains about what they are experts on. And today I am so excited that I'm going to be having a conversation with my friend Julie Bagamary. She is an author, a speaker, and an artist, and she is going to be sharing with us about her journey through foster care and adopting and providing respite for tons of kids over the years. And she's going to walk through the emotional and practical challenges of this and offer some insights into the realities of raising kids from these really tough backgrounds. So whether this is something you're interested in, or you want to support a family that God has called to do this, or you're just curious, you're going to learn so much from Julie here in episode number 79. So listen in. Julie, it's so good to have you on the UnPerfect Podcast. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Shelley. It is my honor.
Well, before we get started, I'm guessing we have some listeners who are wondering what even is a fabric artist. So maybe we should start there. Tell us what you do.
I actually like to prefer textile artists. I basically make quilted art for the walls. I hesitate to say quilted anything because people picture grandma's bed quilt or stuff,
Right.
and I don't do that. I do art for the walls, and I also make clergy stoles, and I teach and stuff. So it's my style is very improvisational. I don't do traditional blocks, although I enjoy them, and it's just not my style.
Awesome. Yes. And hopefully one day this will be on YouTube and they can see the absolutely beautiful artwork behind you that you have quilted. It is beautiful. Well, let's dive in. I'd love to hear what led you to foster or adopt in your experience, maybe how God led you through this journey. I'm just going to give you the floor and let you unpack some of that and basically tell your story.
Okay. It is never something I aspired to do. My kids, we have 4 grown kids, and the last one was in his freshman year of college, and Hurricane Katrina happened, and our church was sending water and food and people down, and because of allergies, I knew that wouldn't work for me. I didn't really feel led to send money. I felt like the Lord was calling us to something else, but I didn't know what that was. So I mentioned it to my husband, Randy, and he said, I think we need to adopt a child who's lost their parents in the hurricane. And I thought, let's send water, let's send food, let's send money. You know, that is not what I wanted to do. And that began a process within my heart of the Lord asking that of us. And I didn't want to talk about it with anybody. I just pretty much, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'll do something else. So I went to a Women of Faith conference with a bunch of ladies from our church. I didn't really want to go to that because wasn't sure I wanted to hear what the Lord wanted from me.
Right.
But at that conference, I was very convicted, and I tell about it in my book. That's how it started, and we began to look at what that looked like. And I, like I said, tell the story. Lots of agencies I called. We didn't know what we were looking for. We just began that process, and the Lord eventually connected us with a caseworker, and we adopted. And you have to be a foster parent to adopt in the United States. So we began that journey. So in that journey, we have fostered many children, sometimes for the weekend, sometimes for years. I will say we were empty nesters, and we were not looking for something new to do. We were not, I was thinking, great, I'm going to have all this time to spend on my art now, and I won't be, going to school functions and, athletic things. I can just really focus on my art. And the Lord had different plans. And
right.
That was scary.
Absolutely. Yeah. He tends to always have different plans than I have for myself. So that's like a common thread of my life.
Yes.
Yeah. So what were some of the hard parts that maybe people who haven't fostered or adopted don't realize is part of the package. Like, I think a lot of people think, oh, I couldn't do that because I get attached and I don't want them to leave or whatever. But there's so much more involved in this. I was just wondering if you could unpack a few of those things that was your part of your experience.
Well, I'll preface that with saying, knowing that the Lord called us to this made those things bearable because they were hard. And, continuing to go back to this is what the Lord has called us to. I think one of the hard things, well, there were many hard things. Part of it was time. I spent a lot of time in meetings and therapy sessions and doctor's offices and, meetings with social workers and trainings. You have to have a lot of training, and, that takes time outside of the regular schedule. There were a lot of times because we had grown kids, so we weren't the young parents looking for a baby, and our parenting skills and methods were challenged. Our faith was challenged. A lot of times Christian homes are wanted because they're safe, because they're loving, but let's not bring in faith in there,
Right.
in a real way. And so those were all things that were challenging. Dishonesty of children, which is a one. A lot of times they are trying to survive, and they don't want to be at your house for the most part. It means a trauma in their lives, and it means possibly not going back with mom and dad, whom they love and care
Sure.
for. You're the enemy, and there's a lot of hurtful things that are said, and those hurt a lot. Having to deal with therapists and doctors that do not mirror my values,
Right.
and being part of a system where you have to, pray about maneuvering in the system and also keeping who we are in the forefront, and finding that balance is challenging.
Absolutely. There's a really famous quote. I'm sure you've seen it on social media and stuff by Jody Landers that says, "A child born to another woman calls me mommy. The magnitude of that tragedy and the depth of that privilege are not lost on me." And
Yes.
yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is certainly a privilege, and like you said, the knowing that God called you, that's so important, because I think, I don't know, maybe when I was younger, I thought if God calls me to this, it's going to be easy. And I don't know why I thought that, because no one in scripture had it easy. We look at Moses and
Right.
all these other people. But you're right. It does. At the end of the day, you go, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what God called us to do. And it's a comfort. It's something that gives you peace when there's chaos all around you.
Right.
And just I know for us, just the trauma that is born out of that
Yes.
tragedy. I think we often think kids are going to be so grateful to be in a loving home, a stable home, and gratitude is not what they're feeling. You just hit the nail on the head when you
Right.
said you're the enemy,
Right.
especially in some of these fostering situations. Even if kids were fostered or adopted as a baby, at some point they're going to come face to face with the trauma that brought them even to the safety of our loving arms. So yeah,
Right.
there's
Right.
definitely that involved.
I learned that, because I had always heard that too. If you have a baby, then they won't experience that. Reality is that when a baby is born, all they know is mom's voice, mom's smell, everything about mom, and they cannot articulate that huge missing piece. They just know it's gone, and it is a trauma, and they bring that trauma into your house because that's what they know. And a lot
Exactly.
of times children they would cause chaos in our home because that's what they were used to. And our home was calm and we love each other. My husband and I get along, and they're not used to that. And so causing chaos brings, quote, normalcy to what they know. And that's hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like they're uncomfortable with the calm and the safety. That's a whole
Right.
new norm to them. Absolutely.
Right.
So even though it is hard, there is so much good in it. But I didn't want to just focus on the hard. We laugh a lot because people who have been interested in adoption in the past, and we adopted out of country, so we were never foster parents. I just have a lot of friends that are fostered, and our church is a very big proponent of trying to help people foster and get trained to foster.
Yes.
But people would ask us if they could sit down and talk to us, and we would say, okay, we're happy to do that. Just be aware that we may accidentally talk you out of it, because we just,
Right.
what we went into, we had no idea what we were getting into. And I'm so glad, because it would have been
Right.
too hard for me to accept that call. I mean, that's just how our God
Right.
sweetly and gently gets us to be a part of his mission, is probably to not let us see everything.
So true.
But as you know, there are blessings in so many ways. I mean, and it's not just the kids' lives who are changed, it's ours also. So I would just love for you to share some blessings you received or experienced through your obedience to God in this area, how he grew you, and personally, spiritually, and with the kids as well.
I think probably one of the better, probably most profound was my marriage. I had a really good marriage in going into this, but when you bring a lot of chaos and trauma into your home, it causes you to either figure it out and work in these new circumstances, or a lot of couples don't make it, and
Right.
that's sad. And so we're both believers, and so we sought the Lord, and sought our marriage to be strengthened, because the children in our home would try to divide and conquer. And so we put forth effort to pray together every day, do a lot of things that strengthened our marriage, still have a date night,
Right.
so that we could build in that fun time, because it wasn't always fun at home. Another thing that came out of it for me is that I now get together with two women twice a week, and I schedule that from week to week, so that I can be with other women that encourage and build up, and that I can build into their life, and they want me to build in their life,
Right.
which is not something a lot of the children had in their hearts. One of the blessings was that I got a little more organized, because I needed to be. I talk about that in my book, a lot of helpful things that I did just so I could be more organized. So that took that off the table, whether it was papers or food or different things. And so our home became a calmer home, and I felt like it was a pretty calm home to start with, but it became calmer. And, another blessing that came out of it that I would never have seen is that healing for some of my own hurts, bringing, the children, bringing up, things in their lives, brought up things in my life.
Right.
And so, there's just, I feel like, the Lord's continually wanting to heal us and strengthen us. And that comes with dealing with some of our own stuff.
Right.
And, we got to build into, kids' lives that we would not have had access to otherwise. And to show them what a healthy marriage looks like, to show them a husband and wife that actually love each other,
Right.
and that you can eat healthy, and, you can do things and be successful in life. I also got to share art. And that was very purposeful. I didn't do that in the beginning because I didn't know how to put the two together. But there came a point where I was able to do art with many of the kids, and not necessarily fabric art, usually not, painting or drawing or different things, so that one, it's fun, but two, it also art can be very healing. There's a lot of research about art and how it heals our soul. And, so I was able to offer that in a very simple and meaningful way. And I love being able to share what I love with those that came through my home. So that was another thing. And probably the most important was sharing our relationship with Jesus.
Right.
And, sometimes going to church or other events became a point of contention with, the authorities. And that was non-negotiable for us. And
Right.
that is our life. And that is, where we come from. And maybe for some of the children that came through our home, it was the first time that maybe they saw someone who was authentic in a
Right.
relationship with Jesus and not just religion or talk. And it is up to the Lord of what He does with that. You
Sure.
offer it, you just be you and who you are, and you just trust Him to use it however He will. So,
Sure. And you said so many powerful things. The marriage, you're right. It can absolutely make or break a marriage. I know one of the
mhm.
things we saw was the triangulation where they try to play
Oh
one
yeah.
parent against the other. And I mean,
Mhm.
that went on for years with us. It has been amazing now that God has done a lot of healing in our kids, but also in us, how much stronger our marriage is now. Like it is
Yes.
like we thought it was strong before, but it's kind of like, all right, throw something else because we've kind of run the gamut. We've done it all. It's
Mhm.
not perfect, but it's definitely reached a new level of strength, I think, through the power of the Holy Spirit. And I also love what you said with the art with kids. I mean, we're learning, just we've had a lot of therapy and our kids have been through a lot of therapy, and kids open up. It's healing in and of itself, but they also
Yes.
open up and talk more when their hands and eyes are busy. Like even
Yes.
any kid, not just kids that come from this kind of developmental trauma. But
Mhm.
I've heard many therapists say, I try to get them drawing or get them doing something where it's a little less intimidating and anxiety building to sit there and look me in the
Right.
eye and talk about something really hard. So
Right.
I
Well,
can,
it's good for adults too. I mean, it's just
sure,
good. It's just
sure,
good.
it is. It is. Yeah, I was just talking to a group of teen girls at a camp, and I suggested to them, I was like, ask your moms if they want to go on a walk with you, because
Mm,
it's
it's good.
easier if you're not having to look one another in the eye and you're just side by side on a walk. And I know that was one thing you did consistently with the kids that were in your home, and I did consistently with
Yes.
my kids, was we're going to take a walk. Sometimes the child was way behind me, kicking and screaming, like hating every minute of it, but by the end of the walk they
Right.
would catch up. And there's just something really powerful about breathing deeply, and that kind of
Mhm.
moves you emotionally to a better place. So that
Absolutely.
reminded me of that.
Absolutely. A lot of times when we would on the way home from therapy, I would stop, no matter how old the kids were, teens or little, I would stop at the playground and
Mm.
let them swing and run or whatever they wanted to do for about 30 minutes just to decompress before we went home for dinner so that they could get some of that out before we came home for a meal.
Oh, that is a great idea. And I know as a parent in general of my biological kids and my adopted kids, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is grace. Like thought
Mhm.
I understood God's grace before, but now just seeing how patient He is with me, because I see how impatient I am with my kids, or how
Yeah.
continually forgiving He is, how continually selfish I am. In both cases of parenthood, I've had to learn selflessness. One of the things I had to that I'm thankful that God taught me was giving up my desire to be everything my kid needed.
Mm,
Apart from Jesus, obviously,
right.
he is what they need. But I mean, what these kids want and need is to be loved and accepted by their birth parents. And
Right.
whether
Right.
they were given up, birth parents gave up their rights, or they gave them up for another reason, we don't always know what that story is. But I've had to give my kids a safe space to mourn that loss. At
Right.
first, I wanted them to be like, no, I'm your mom. I selfishly wanted that, but I've had to learn to be curious, affectionate, give them a place to be affectionate or angry or whatever
Right.
emotion they have, that they're grieving a reality that I've never had to grieve, or a loss that I've never had to experience.
And I got that was a book I read called 20 Things Adopted Kids Wish Their Parents Knew. I'll put that in the show notes along with your books. But I think I was really struggling with that till I read that. And it's written by a woman who was adopted. And she was like, you got to let them, go through this process.
Right.
I know you were inspired and challenged and encouraged by everything that Julie shared with us today. This is not the end. I did cut this interview in half so you can listen to the next half, episode number 81. So make sure you tune in to hear the rest of what Julie has to share with us. And I will put links to everything in the show notes that we've mentioned in the podcast, but especially her books and her website so that you can connect with her there. Also, Julie has graciously gifted and signed a copy of her book, Foster Parenting Matters, Creating a Home of Hope and Healing, to give to one blessed, unperfect listener. That could be you. All you need to do is follow the podcast if you haven't already. This makes sure that you get each episode the day it comes out, as well as keeping up with the episodes that you've heard or started or still need to hear. So take a screenshot of the podcast showing you're a subscriber or follower on whatever platform you choose to use and send it to me at hello@shellysneed.com. Or you can text it to me at the link in the show notes. Put the word foster in the subject line or the text and voila, you will be entered. I will announce the winner on January 7th, 2025. If you're not getting my newsletter, you're missing out. It's called Musings for the Unperfect Ponderer, which I'm guessing is you since you're here and have found your way to the podcast. You can also subscribe to that in the show notes. As always, I am praying that you are able to see glimpses of God's glory in the now and the not yet of your unperfect life this week. See you next time.